Good afternoon, Dr. Dippold. This is Javod.
Erika. And Roxanna.
And we are going to do our presentation on the flipped classroom model of education. It's a pretty popular piece, or a model of teaching that's the online revolution has brought us. So we're going to try to do this in the format of a flipped classroom with the kind of a Blackboard style video, so please forgive our poor handwriting, but we're going to give it a shot. So we're talking about the flipped classroom. And the idea behind the flipped classroom is that traditionally lecture has been done in the class, and then you go home and you do your homework. So in the flipped classroom, the idea is that actually what you're flipping is you're doing your homework in class, or what was traditionally thought to be homework in class, and then when you go home, you listen to lectures. The thought is that with everybody in a group together and with current learning theory, that people will learn different things in groups as opposed to just strictly listening to a lecture talk. That using new technology, you can do the more impersonal part of it, the lecture, while you are home with your computer, and then when you come into class, you can have more interaction among the students and kind of apply what you've learned instead of just trying to learn it all for the first time. All right, so now we're going to talk a bit about the history of the flipped classroom model. Whoops. So here we go. So history. Go ahead, Roxanna.
Okay. So the history of the flipped classroom model. So the concept of the flipped classroom model was brought about starting in the 1990s. In 1993, Allison King published an article called "From Sage on the Stage to Guide on the Side." This creative name says it all. In the article, King explains the importance of class time being used for construction of meaning rather than just information transmission. This idea was not specifically called the flip model, but it was very similar in concept. Another big influence was Harvard professor Erika, who developed a instructional strategy that he called peer instruction. In 1997, he published a book about this approach and how it moved the transfer of information out of the classroom and the understanding and internalization of information in the classroom. This approach allowed Mazur to coach and guide his students through the learning process rather than just lecturing his students for the whole class period. Now, in 2000, Maureen Lage, Glenn Platt, and Michael Treglia published a paper which was called "Inverting the Classroom, a Gateway to Creating an Inclusive Learning Environment." The paper addressed their research on the flipped classroom model on more of a college level. They used this flipped classroom model on an intro economics class. To make the course more compatible with their students' various learning styles, they created an inverted classroom where they provided students with a variety of tools to gain some exposure to the material outside of the class. This was including textbook readings, lecture videos, and PowerPoint presentations. So now we all know Khan Academy. The most recognizable contributor to the flipped classroom model is Salman Khan. In 2004, Khan started recording videos for his younger cousin that he was tutoring. His cousin asked for the recorded lessons as it would allow her to skip over parts that she already knew and go over sections that she was struggling with and needed more review.
And he was a pretty big deal at the time. This was, here's a picture of him on the cover of Forbes. The flipped classroom model, he really popularized it, and then got a lot of funding from different sources, from the government, from different private institutions, including Microsoft, to kind of push this model forward. So it really exploded after he got involved.
Definitely. So Khan created Khan Academy from this flip model, and now Khan Academy has become a widely used online tool that has helped many students learn various subjects. Now, in 2007, a high school, Woodland Park High School, their chemistry teachers, Aaron Sams and Jonathan Bergman, started recording their lectures and posting them online for their students. They originally started the video lectures in order to accommodate students when they were absent, and this became very beneficial for all students. So taking it to another level, in 2011, Michigan's Clintondale High School flipped all of their classes. The principal made the initiative to develop flipped classroom models. This strategy proved to be very successful in enhancing student learning. The flipped classroom had many students who had previously failed the course. With this model, no students received a grade lower than C+. This model was very effective in improving student learning. After 2011, the school's failure rate dropped from 30% to 10%, which is a big difference. And their graduation rates raised above 90%. Also, college attendance went from 63 in 2010 to 80% in 2012. So it was extremely beneficial. The flip model has shown to be very helpful in all levels of education. MEF University is a non-profit private university located in Istanbul, Turkey, which was founded in 2014. MEF University is the first university in the world that has adopted the flipped classroom model and university-wide.
We have a picture of that, of their campus. So this is really the first time where a university has advertised itself as all its classes being part of the flipped classroom model, and to this day, I believe it still is the only university to be 100% using this education model. So now we're going to talk about some of the themes that have emerged in this very young field. Again, it's only been about 25 years since the flipped classroom model has really been around, but in that time, some different themes and different modes of using the flipped classroom model have emerged. So we're going to talk about just kind of what's being done today and different aspects of the model.
So when looking at the flipped classroom strategies, something that comes up is the 4 pillars of flip. What they stand for are a flexible environment. The flexible environment is important because what it does is it allows the instructor to physically rearrange the learning spaces to accommodate for the lesson. They can support either group activities or promote independent studies between their students. This creates a flexible space for everyone in the environment. There are different expectations. All the students have different timelines, and they're all assessed based on their own skills and abilities. This is considered to be one of the most important sectors of the flipped learning environment.
So to open it up, sometimes it'll be individual work, sometimes it'll be group work, and it should be able to accommodate both of those?
Correct. Should be able to accommodate to the lesson and to the individual's learning preferences. The second pillar that creates a well-rounded structure and environment would be the learning culture. Through this, the teacher is the primary source of information for the students. During class time, they explore topics in greater depth and rich in opportunities. So students are actively involved in the construction of their knowledge, and they participate in ways that make sense for them in and out of the classroom.
So kind of going along with the flexibility of it, part of it was, the teacher can give you information that you can do at home, whereas before kind of all the learning was done or was given to students by the teacher, but now to kind of flip that, the culture has to change, that the students are maybe getting more of or new knowledge on their own time rather than just straight from the professor.
Exactly, and that's helped accommodate and take into account the fact that some things are taught better in person and others are taught they benefit the student better if they're taught online, which leads into the third point, which would be intentional content. Through intentional content, the main focus is to understand how to maximize the time that teachers and their students have in the classroom. Time is limited, and so being able to maximize it helps on both ends of the spectrum. You focus on what material would be most beneficial to learn in person versus what would be better online, and this helps the students develop a conceptual understanding of each topic that they discuss in class.
I think they had talked about, say, like math is more of a processes thing. So doing that at home would make more sense because it is a very individual, step-by-step process. But in the class, then instead of learning that, the teacher can be there for one-on-one instruction, or the group can work together on maybe some more problem-based problem sets. So, like determining what should be in a video versus what actually taught and what should be worked on during class is something that needs to be actively decided on instead of just kind of covering both the topics or covering the topic twice.
Yes, and by being able to recognize what is more beneficial to students in person or online, that's how you really get through to the individuals and see what works best for them in terms of learning the material, and not only that, but being able to help their classmates if needed. The fourth final aspect of the pillars is a professional educator. This seems to be quite obvious. You of course need someone to lead your classroom and to teach your students. The role of the educator is just as important and even more demanding in a flipped classroom as opposed to in a traditional setting, because feedback is one of the ways in which students are able to learn and retain the information, and now the teacher has to be able to provide feedback for every single one of the 20, 30 plus students, in some cases 100, and just know what people are struggling in and what their strengths and weaknesses are. This becomes a little more complicated in this model, but being able to have that individual time with a professor really does help, and it's more effective for students. The slight downfall with that is that teachers need to be able to tolerate and understand that there will be a controlled chaos forming in their classroom. It's not too much of an issue, but it may scare teachers a little bit. So being able to work through that and understanding that all students are going to be asking questions left and right on different subjects is just something they need to keep up with.
And the sage on the stage mode, the idea that the professor is the one just talking at students, like it's kind of a one lane street. That is how it's just one way of doing the teaching, and it's one size fits all. So when you open it up to class for, like you're saying, kids working at a different pace, I feel like educationally that's going to take a lot more diversity in approach. So this would add that challenge for the professor.
Precisely.
All right. Now we're going to talk about current concepts in the flipped classroom model.
So within the flipped classroom model, there are several different ways in which you can help your students and implement this model. There is no right or wrong way. There's not one straight shoot. And what we've come to discover is that there are 7 major ways in which students can learn using this specific model. The first of which is the standard inverted classroom. That's what we typically recognize as our flipped classroom when we think about it. In this standard inverted model, students are assigned homework and materials relevant to the next class. They practice their schoolwork and then ask instructors for help on the material the next day. So this is what we typically think of and what we focus on, but there are other ways in which this is implemented.
So this was so when you say standard, it's the lecture is done at home,
Yes.
and then whatever would have been originally assigned as homework,
Is
that's
then
done
discussed in the classroom.
done in
The
the
teacher is able
classroom.
to go around and help students see where they're having issues and just kind of work through it with them.
So just a straight flip.
Just a straight flip. Our second one would be discussion oriented. What we see with the discussion oriented model, we have teachers assign lecture videos, and these are usually your TED Talks, your YouTube videos, Khan Academy, which we discussed earlier. Class is designed to discuss and explore the specific subject that is being focused on. And then the next day in the classroom, a seminar style is set up. So it helps bring the focus and attention to the discussion of the one particular topic. The entire group is able to ask questions, ask the teacher, ask themselves, ask others, and everyone is focused on one specific topic in this model.
So kind of what we do for our class now, where we come in and we do the readings ahead
we
of
have our
time and
specific
then
subjects, come in and ask them
discuss it
questions.
amongst each other. There we go.
Yep, exactly. Moving on, we have our third, which is a demonstration-focused style. This works specifically well for those in rigorous math or science courses. What is done is there's a demonstration method. It provides the student with an example of things and how things should be done. So for example, you can have your math problems, your science experiment, your labs. You can see how the professor wants you to conduct the experiment or solve the problem. Students are shown how to do it, and then they can mimic the experiment on their own, usually at home, at their own pace, depending on how well they understand the concepts, honestly.
And review it over and over again as they need.
Until it works.
Mm-hmm.
Our fourth would be the faux flipped. This is particularly for our younger students who don't really have any homework. Some elementary schools like to use this in their classrooms. They watch videos in class, and then when the teacher goes around, he or she is able to assist each young person. There's no pressure on having to complete problems and having things graded. It's more so just going around and ensuring that these individuals understand and grasp the main concepts that are being presented to them.
And then they can just watch it at home. Like they have it recorded, so if they need to review it.
They're able to do so.
But no homework to flip to.
No homework to flip to.
Sounds nice.
The fifth would be our group-based. So this is when you watch your videos and lectures at home, similar to the standard, which we talked about earlier. You go home, you watch all the videos, everything that has to be done for class. Next day you come in and you team up with your classmates for the assignments. And this selection is usually done based on those individuals who possess similar skill sets as you or are lacking in similar skills that we are all able to learn together. It helps the teacher come in if every single person is struggling with variables in a particular group, then that group of 5 or 6 individuals can talk to the professor and get the help that they need. If these other 4 or 5 are working on fractions, then they can get that help and kind of help each other as well. It's more effective for the teacher, which is something that needs to be kept in mind. With our sixth, we have the virtual flipped. And this is similar to what we see at ASU with our online curriculum. This eliminates the classroom altogether. It's incorporated mostly at the college level, as I said. Students do not go to a physical classroom. Instead, they just watch videos online, submit their homework online. They ask each other questions online. It's essentially our Blackboard program that we use. You can schedule in-person office hours or meet up with your professor, but it's typically just online. The focus is to be able to learn through your videos and your projects on your own. Then the seventh and final would be the flip the teacher. So this is similar to what we are currently doing in our project. Teachers are not the only ones who provide the content. Students can take subjects that they've mastered specifically and create videos in order to teach the other members of their classroom on a very specific subject. So, for example, we are teaching you about the flipped classroom experience, and that's what we're doing. We are teaching you how to do it, and hopefully other students in our class are taking on different projects, different presentations, and will be able to teach us different concepts. This keeps the content relatable because you are learning from your peers, and it's also kind of fun because you're able to teach your teacher instead of having the teacher teach you.
So now we want to talk about some of the critiques as well as the future trends of the flipped classroom model. In 2015, a group of researchers at Harvey Mudd actually did a head-to-head comparison between a flipped classroom model and a traditional classroom model in one of their engineering classes. And what they found, what the results showed, were some of the common critiques of the flipped classroom model. So one thing that they found was that there was a tremendous amount of upfront work that needed to be done by the professor. There's a steep learning curve in how to create content, how to create videos. It's difficult to write effectively. So it was difficult for them to create this content, especially the first time through. What goes hand in hand with this is also money. How do you pay people to create this content? It's easier to pay for hours teaching, hours lecturing. That's a little more easy in the traditional model. With flipped content, it's a little harder to decide how to pay or how to reimburse professors for creating this content, which, if it's going to be done well, is going to take a lot of time and money. They also highlighted some of the misuse of the flipped classroom model. One of the terms that is often seen is offloading, which is doesn't even sound like a very pleasant term. It's this idea that all this content that you're going to do during lecture, great, now we can just offload that on students so they can just do that on their own time. What happens, and then in class you just kind of review that, go over it all over again without any kind of new content, without any discussion, any interaction amongst the students. So that was seen as a critique of how the flipped model could be abused in terms of just making students spend twice the amount of time to do the same amount of work if there's no creativity kind of to go along with that. The other issue is evaluations, how to evaluate students, as well as how to keep them moving along in time with the lesson, because it takes some kind of self-direction if you're not sitting in the class under the direct observation of a professor or of a teacher. So that goes with any new technology, how to then evaluate students with it. Some of the benefits that people are talking about for the future of the flipped classroom model is one is that students can go at their own pace. A lot of studies have shown that students learn at different paces, but still can get to that same place. Some people start slower and get faster. Others start fast and get slower. And so this really allows students to go at their own speed and not get discouraged. If they start a bit slow, they can review and really go at their own pace, which is kind of a liberating aspect of the flipped classroom model. And then the other thing is kind of the diversity of content. This again goes with any technology, but you can have these lecture videos, but you can also have games and different ways of learning. So for instance, at Stanford University, students would learn from videos at home and then about resuscitation, and then would actually come and practice on dummies. As you can see here, I'm learning how to give oxygen to the dummies. So it can really help students who need to learn beforehand and then come in and do hands-on teaching as opposed to spending time doing lectures. When they're all together, they can really just focus on the hands-on learning. So this has been a brief overview of the flipped classroom model. I hope you found it interesting, and here I'm going to find our bibliography and put that up on the screen. Thank you very much. On the hands-on learning. So this has been a brief overview of the flipped classroom model. I hope you found it interesting, and here I'm going to find our bibliography and put that up on the screen. Thank you very much.